What's up? Welcome back to the Film Monologue podcast. I'm Tommy D, and I want to talk about a film that I just watched for the second time the other day. I watched it a couple weeks ago. It was produced in 2025, and that film is Sinners by Ryan Coogler. This film was incredible. Everything from the cinematography, the direction, the sound mixing, production, locations, wardrobe, the acting. This was a phenomenal movie. I'm sure everyone has heard about it. This film, it seems like it's sweeping or it's doing very well in the awards circuit. But I finally had a chance to watch the film, and I want to just talk a little bit about my thoughts on it and maybe some ideas that I saw. Um, this film takes place in the 1930s, in Prohibition era in the South. I believe it was Mississippi, and it's about these. It's centered around the notion of blues music being a very it's the crux of the story. Michael B. Jordan actually plays twins, and I believe they were smokestacked. I think that's what their names were. I'm sure someone else can verify. I can double check later. Um, Michael B. Jordan, his performance, the fact that he could play not just one character, two characters, two brothers, twins, and essentially a third character. And I can kind of talk a little bit about that. There will be, I guess, some spoiler alerts here if you haven't seen it, but it is a film that you should watch. He essentially plays three characters, but for this point, he or for this aspect, we'll talk about that he played two characters, twins. He's phenomenal. I mean, he created distinct voices for two different characters. He was captivating. He definitely sold the gangster vibe for the brothers. They Michael B. Jordan's characters, the twin brothers, they worked under Al Capone in Chicago, and they were just getting back down south to Mississippi, and they were going to have they were recruiting some people, musicians and others for their own juke joint, where they're going to have a battle of the blues. Um, that's sort of the overarching narrative. Um, it was right off the bat, the cinematography was beautiful, and within the first couple minutes, they enter one of the characters, Sammy, enters a church, and the preacher, his father, the preacher, I noticed right away was this actor named Saul Williams. Saul Williams, I w- I've known about him for years and years. About probably 20 years ago, he's a poet, a spoken word poet, and he was a slam poet. And I was very big into slam poetry back then. But the fact that, and I knew that he was an actor because I believe he went to NYU. The fact that he was popped up in this film was just a pleasant surprise for me because I was a big fan of his writings early on, and the fact that he's acting in this film in 2026 and all these years later, it was it was pretty amazing, and it kind of surprised me. So I was super happy to see that he was in the film. It was a small part, but it was it was a cool aspect of that film that for me was a treat. Um, so in that actually in that church scene, the Ryan Coogler and his editor, they did something really cool, which actually drew the audience in. They kind of splice cut, um, like split second aspects of zombie scenes, I guess that were gonna be It was like a foreshadowing of what was about to happen, but it really kind of made you jump, and it really captured your attention. At least for me, it captured my attention. Um, the camera movements, the blocking was really amazing. Right off the bat, when we see Michael B. Jordan, we see the camera kind of come. He's kind of leaning against the car, and we see the camera kind of rotate out, and it's kind of like maybe on a slider or some sort of gimbal, and then it reveals the second character, also Michael B. Jordan, his twin, which I thought was really cool. And I wonder how they did it, if it was some sort of composite overlay, if they had to shoot the scene a couple of times and kind of insert Michael B. Jordan's character in two different places. But it's pretty interesting how were able to do that pretty seamlessly. Um, I mean, this film was, I believe the budget is, and I could double check. I think it was 90 million or 100 million. When you have a budget like that, you can make things happen. I'll tell you. Making a film is really hard. Making a short, I just directed a short film. I'm just coming off of that, and that was difficult. And that's only a 5-minute short film, and I had a crew under me. Doing a big production like this, it's incredibly difficult. So to pull something like this off, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of great talented people around you, and Ryan Coogler is an incredible director. He's probably one of my favorites right now. So he pulled it off. Um, uh, the the idea of so the screenplay was incredible, and I wonder who. I believe Ryan Coogler wrote the screenplay. Let me see. I'm pretty sure he wrote the screenplay. Yeah, Ryan Coogler wrote the screenplay. The script was incredible. The storyline was amazing. The fact that he was able to interweave this idea of blues music, of in the South, with prohibition, and kind of like these two gangsters that coming back from Al Capone's sort of crew, and kind of like you know, throwing this party, this Battle of the Blues was amazing. It was a fresh idea of being able to bring this sort of music world into this sort of gangster film and turn it into like a genre zombie film. It's phenomenal. So the screenplay was incredible. Um, and it all stems from that, right? A good story, you need a good story to tell, and he definitely wrote a fantastic story. Um, I've noticed that there was a lot of negotiations going on, just between like Michael B. Jordan's characters and the other sub characters there. They were always sort of negotiating. So I wonder if there was some sort of symbolic aspect of business or capitalism. It's just something that sort of caught my eye, or caught my my ears and my eye. I guess through their dialogue. Um, the the other thing was, um, they would intercut scenes of the sun right throughout the day, and Um, this is before we realize that we're actually getting into some sort of zombie movie. And there was a foreshadowing. Looking back when I watched it again, I'm like, okay, it's not just a cutaway shot of the sun, even though it was beautiful. It actually signified that it was daylight, and that zombies can't come out in the daylight. They must come out at night. And it just dawned on me the other day, when I was watching it again. I'm like, oh, that's why they intercut it there. So their use of editing was really interesting. I think they did it a great job, sort of foreshadowing with the cuts. Like I mentioned earlier, they had the intercuts of the zombie sequences. Um, I have a bunch of notes here, so I'm just sort of reviewing my notes of what I kind of wanted to go over. Uh, the it was actually a pretty complex story because Michael B. Jordan, one of the characters, I forgot which one it was. I don't know if it was Smoke or Stack. He goes back to see his either girlfriend or his wife, old wife or ex-wife or whoever it was, and there was a complex sub story there about them losing a child, which I thought was like a subtle, dramatic sort of undertone to this whole genre piece that we're about to get into. So I thought that was interesting. Sammy, I forgot who played that. Let me see who played that. Sammy Moore, I think his name was. Um, Let me see who played Sammy Moore. Played by Miles Caton or Caton, Caton. He did an amazing job. There was a scene when um, Sammy Moore, the character Sammy Moore, he was the cousin of Michael B. Jordan's characters, the two brothers, right? So Michael B. Jordan, his characters picked up Sammy Moore and then they were driving. They had to do some sort of, I believe it was some sort of beer run. Um, but Sammy Moore went with one of the Michael B. Jordan's characters, and they were just driving. But there was this moment when he actually pulled out the guitar and was playing blues and singing the blues. And Michael B. Jordan's character, I keep saying that it was either Smoke or Stack. There was twins. They were identical, obviously. Um, there was that moment where he was just caught off guard that wow, his cousin can actually play, and it was actually really amazing. Like the impression I got was that okay, this is a person who is going to try to make money off of his family member because his actually he mentioned that he's gonna they can make a lot of money with his voice and his musical talents. Um, so okay, so I mean, maybe I'm rambling a little bit. They essentially they there's a sequence where we finally see that um, there's this person, this white man who kind of enters scene. The way they blocked it was really cool. He kind of pops into scene and runs towards this house and this person knocks on the door and it's opened up and he's like the guy is sort of like mangled, he's either beat up or whatever. He convincingly persuaded them that he was on the run from someone and he had to get in. Well, he got into the house, and then there was this sort of Native American, I believe. There was like a scene where a Native American tribe or like a chiefsman or something along those lines, they came back to that same house and they were trying to warn the person that there was someone on the run and they're not who they think they are. They're very dangerous and don't let them in. But they had already let them in. And it was about dusk at this moment, and they had to leave. Right, the Native American had to leave. Right, him and his tribe. I don't know if it was a tribe. Don't quote me on that. It was like a group of people. Um, but they left. Right. Well, in this sequence, it was the wife. She had like a shotgun or whatever. Puts it down. She goes back to the house inside and is calling for her husband. Well, when she walks into the room, the guy who was on the run uh, bit his neck and bit the husband's neck, and the husband was already a zombie. It was just a crazy jump scare sequence. Um, it was really, really like it sort of it put you in a state of like, okay, we are now entering a new aspect of the film, right? It's not just a backstory of getting down to this sort of juke joint where they're going to have this party. We're now entering a story where there's going to be a zombie sort of situation going on. So Ryan Coogler, hats off to him. He just did a phenomenal job, sort of creating this overarching story. Mm, so, um, obviously, like the color grading was beautiful. The locations were gorgeous. Um, it was definitely a film. I would say. I mean, it's probably my top five favorite films I watched in the past couple of years. It was certainly an impressionable film. It was one of those movies that I believe that Ryan Coogler should win. I don't know if they had these awards yet, but he should win some sort of Academy Award or something along those lines because the direction was so well done. I mean, having just directed a short film and knowing what's involved, it is very, very difficult to pull off something of that magnitude. Even just a short film is very difficult to pull off. There's so many variables that can go wrong, and there's crew and cast, and there's a lot of issues that can happen, right? But to do a feature film on that scale and to do it so seamlessly and beautifully, he really is a master at the craft. There was one sequence. So like there was one sequence that kind of caught me off guard, and they were in the juke joint at this point, and it was kind of like the battle of the bands, and the Sammy was playing his music, right, the blues, but the issue is that um, they kind of took you out of the story because they went through generations of what blues music sort of affected from past to future. And they kind of did like a camera movement where we saw like a break dancer, we saw like more of like tribal, and then like we kind of went around and sort of like the different generations of how blues music sort of affected or where it sort of came from. So that was during like this party scene, people were dancing. That was the only thing that sort of threw me out of the storyline. And I can understand why he made that choice to do that. But I do think it was a little bit of a hindrance on like the suspension of disbelief, right? It kind of took me out. Um, but it wasn't that long. It was like a maybe a 60-second, 90-second sequence. So it wasn't that big of an issue, but it was definitely something that kind of like threw me off guard. I can understand his point of view why he would do something like that, but I just don't think it made the story. I don't think it made it like I'm dropping my notes here. I don't think it made the story seamless. Um, well, with that said, I mean, still, the movie was fantastic. So, um, the idea of race was something that certainly was an undertone. Here we are in the South. It's a um, black dominated film, right? And um, the zombies were white people, right? So it was initially a white man, then it was a white two white men and a white woman. But you could tell that there was the racial undertones. Um, now, um, I think it was more so obviously like the bad aspects. Like, I think I think something along the lines of, and I'm not trying to get political on this. This is like the last thing I really want to do is get political on filmmaking here. But I think that they just had the notion that white people were kind of like infecting maybe in a sort of way, like, and maybe this is like, maybe it's a little bit over my head. So I don't really have too much of an opinion, but you could tell that there was an undertone of race going on. And even the zombie, when they weren't zombies. So that what they did was they were zombies, but they were trying to what they would do is they would disguise themselves as regular people to try to enter into the juke joint, but the only way they can get in is if they were invited in. So at one moment, the main zombie, I don't even know his name, I forgot his name. He's at the door with the other two, and they're trying to enter in, and they end up playing a folk song. They're saying that they're musicians, they had their banjos, and they wanted to be part of the battle of the blues, or the music party. Well, Michael B. Jordan's character would not allow him in. So even he was like, "Oh, is it because of my skin, the color of my skin?" Whatever. Small undertones of race, but I don't think it was anything that was like a predominant aspect of the film. Not by any means, but I think it just added a certain dimension to it. Um, there was a really cool jump scare where Michael B. Jordan's one of the characters was dating this woman who was a biracial woman, and after the disguised zombies, were walking away. They really wanted to go in, but they started walking away. She ended up going back out to see what they were all about. Well, she went back out there, and they were playing music, and they were listening to her sort of backstory of what, like, her mother just passed away, and et cetera, et cetera. So they were um, faking being empathetic. Well, there was a scene when she was walking back towards the juke joint, and you see the zombie sort of just pop up and like fly towards her, and then it just like cuts. Super jump scare, very fun. Just a cool filmmaking trick that they did, and it sort of made me out of my seat. So you get that in this film. You get these jump scares, you get a really good storyline, you get amazing directing, amazing acting, amazing cinematography. Obviously, the sound and the sound mixing was incredible. You have to have it in some sort of like genre horror piece. Um, Overall, an amazing film. I've been rambling on this podcast, but I'll just say that I highly recommend it. And maybe I didn't do it justice, but I do think that um, you will be pleasantly surprised if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, you know, leave a comment below. Tell me what I'm missing. I'm sure I'm missing a lot. Um, and I will be back with the next episode, or a next analysis or review of another film soon. All right, thank you very much. Bye.